Hello, everybody, and welcome to Right Here, Right Now, live Buffalo football talk. I'm your host, Alex Brasky, alongside my co-host, Ajay Cybulski, here for the Batavia Daily News and Livingston County News. Each week, we'll discuss Buffalo's favorite football team, along with all of the comings and goings from Orchard Park. What's up, AJ? Tell the people what we have in store for them today.
Alex, hope you're having a great Wednesday today, and all of the listeners that are tuning into this one. We're going to discuss some of the stuff going on at One Bills Drive and some players that are maybe on the bubble or guys that need to step up this year for this Buffalo Bills team in 2024 as OTAs have progressed over the past couple of weeks. So we'll touch on some of those players. And then later in the show, we want to touch on the AFC East, kind of where it stands now with the draft now gone and free agency kind of boiling down here. So there's not much left in terms of big additions, maybe still some veteran, moves at some point. But for the most part, everything's set in stone. And we'll look at across AFC East where we think the Bills stand in that regard.
Yeah, so a lot to get to here this evening. And we're going to kick it off with a little behind-the-scenes story, AJ. Today, very exciting day for me, but
the dog.
It started at the office today, me and you really chopping it up. We had a great day putting together the two newspapers, the Livingston County News and the Batavia Daily News. I go home, I get a bite to eat, preparing for the podcast. I peer out my second floor apartment window on Main Street here in Batavia, and I look down, big black dog sprinting across the sidewalk, weaving in and out of traffic. So what do? I put the S on my chest. I spring into action. I run down the stairs, burst through the door, chase the dog down about a mile. Me and a couple other people, we get it cornered in the backyard, and we're able to come away with it. Secure the dog. The dog is safe. So really all in a day's work for a sports reporter. You put together the newspaper, preparing for the podcast later, and in between, we're saving animals' lives here at the Batavia Daily News, AJ.
How was the stamina? Were you feeling good? Did you feel loose when you were chasing it down, or were you like, oh my gosh, I'm kind of tired here?
Yeah, well, it was so kind of out of the ordinary and really caught me by surprise. I ran out of the apartment in my Nike slides, so not the best footwear choice. And near the end of the pursuit, once I was able to secure the dog, slides were gone at that point, but job was done. Maybe a couple marks on the bottom of the feet, but it was all for a worthy cause.
Yeah, the adrenaline got you through, and I'm glad that you were able to hopefully make someone's day in terms of saving that dog, and that's good for you. That again, like you said, a true sports reporter in that aspect.
Yeah, I think if I saved anybody's day, obviously the owner of the dog and the dog itself, but also the officer who was called to chase down the dog. I think myself and a couple of the other bystanders that helped out made her job a little bit easier as well. And anything we can do for the men and women in blue, we are more than willing to do here on Right Here, Right Now, live Buffalo football talk. But AJ, the people came for Bills talk, and Bills talk is what we will deliver, beginning with kind of the takeaways from the first 2 weeks of OTAs and how we expect what we've seen and learned over the past 2 weeks, how we expect that to play out as the offseason and preseason continues to progress here. And obviously the big star of week 2, or at least media week 2 at Bills OTAs, was Damar Hamlin. Hadn't heard a lot from him since he came back from the scary moment in Cincinnati. Obviously, the fake punt last year against the Chiefs, not a shining moment in any respect. But he had a big play on Tuesday. Went up, secured an interception on a Josh Allen pass intended for Ty Johnson. And Damar Hamlin, Bills fans have really written him off in terms of potentially being able to produce within this defense. It is under a new defensive coordinator in Bobby Babich. There is a new defensive backs coach out there for the Bills. So some changes have been made. And obviously the biggest changes that have been made are 2 new starting safeties. So the starting roles need to be figured out. The depth roles need to be figured out. And at this point of the offseason, it seems like Hamlin is fitting right into the mix. And a big play like he made on Tuesday gives him a leg up in this chase to like I said, provide some of that depth. I don't think he has a chance at one of the starting roles, but perhaps a depth spot behind a Taylor Rapp, Mike Edwards, and maybe even Cole Bishop if he's able to sneak his way in there. But what's your view on this situation? Can he fend off a guy like D. Delaney and others for a role at that position and on special teams? I think at this point he's in a good position to do so, particularly with the way he's looked over the first 2 weeks at OTAs.
Yeah, it's good to see Damar Hamlin making plays here early in 2024. And people do forget, like you mentioned, that he was a key contributor on that 2022 defense. Obviously, the scary injury, he went down. But there were some things, moments to like from Damar Hamlin. I don't think it was consistent. Obviously, a later day 3 pick a couple of years ago. So you weren't really expecting him to be that much of a player in terms of the draft pedigree when he came out. But I think he's shown an ability, especially in 2022, to stay on the field, make some plays. And look, in terms of where the safety room's at, I really do think he has a chance. Now, you look at D. Delaney, who has starting experience with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and others, and you look at that, safety room to round it out, Mike Edwards, Taylor Rapp, who played on this defense last year. But there's not really much experience, Alex, in terms of guys who have played on this defense. So Damar Hamlin is the most experienced, and I know Taylor Rapp played a little bit last year, but not nearly as much as Damar Hamlin did in 2022. So you look at the safety room, and Damar Hamlin, combined with his special teams ability that he's shown over the past couple of years, I think it's interesting to me that people have written him off. Now, I am so uncertain with it because I don't know what Cam Lewis is and where he fits in. I don't know what D. Delaney is yet. So it's still a lot to be figured out in terms of that aspect. But like you said, Damar Hamlin, a guy who really last year, I think, just needed kind of a year after that scary incident to kind of reset himself, reset his body. Even mentally, who knows what he went through in that experience. So obviously that was a challenge. But now you're stacking more bricks. You're at OTAs. It's another offseason to prepare your body mentally, physically. And he comes out in OTAs and makes a play, intercepts Josh Allen. So, yeah, I'm happy to see that he's making plays, and I'm curious to see where he goes from here.
Yes, T. Jeremiah giving me the old pat on the back for the dog savior earlier this evening. It was really quite the moment, and really happy to do it. You hate to see an animal in danger and on a main thoroughfare. There aren't many main thoroughfares in Batavia, so for him to be weaving in and out of traffic, certainly a frightening circumstance. And then we have John Robert chipping in. Delaney also played cornerback, so maybe some positional versatility for Delaney may help him in that race for depth at the safety position. But you mentioned it. Damar Hamlin, very experienced within Sean McDermott's defensive system, played 86% of the snaps during the 2022 season on defense. So he's the most experienced safety within this defensive system that the Bills have at their disposal. So that's got to be worth something. We'll continue to monitor that as we
go. One more thing. Can I add one more thing?
Go ahead.
The safety room in general, like if you look at it, they signed Taylor Rapp to that 3-year, just over $10 million deal. They signed Mike Edwards to a $2 million deal 1 year, and then Cole Bishop's on a rookie contract. So there's not like, it might just come down to who plays the best because they're not really paying these safeties a lot of money. It's really going to be based off OTAs, which again, Damar Hamlin made that big play, but also training camp. So that's just interesting to me that there's not a lot of money invested in the safety position when you lose guys like Poyer and Hyde, who you were paying for years. Over the past 7 years, you were paying them a lot of money. So it is interesting that there's not a lot of money in that safety room, and we'll see what happens with it. But it's definitely a very open competition heading into training camp.
Yeah, going back to the play that Hamlin made for a moment, pass intended for Ty Johnson. James Cook absent from OTAs week 2 during the media portion. So Ty Johnson and Ray Davis got some increased opportunity, and both of those two really battling it out for that complementary role behind James Cook. And Ray Davis has really stood out to me over these first 2 weeks. And Ty Johnson has really picked up where he left off and continued to put on display what he did last season. But Ray Davis, for a rookie, just his demeanor out there, the way he looks when he catches passes, his immediate reaction to certain circumstances, the confidence that he exudes out there on the football field stands out amongst these Bills rookies. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how that room plays out. But I posted it on X after Bills OTAs on Tuesday, my latest way too early hot take of Bills to OTAs is Ray Davis is really going to be a contributor in this league and sooner rather than later. And I think that's how the Bills saw it when they drafted him. And I think they're giving him every opportunity here in the early going, rookie mini camp, OTAs, training camp coming up. So Ray Davis has really hit the ground running and really impressed me thus far.
Yeah, it's really hard, Alex, because me personally, what I saw from Ty Johnson last year in his limited snaps, I really did like what I saw. I think he's a pass catcher. I think he's a solid run blocker. I think he can do all the things you want in a complementary back to James Cook. Now, like you said, Ray Davis, 24, 25 years old, so already comes into the league with a little bit of age, veteran experience, played on 3 different college teams, Temple, Vanderbilt, and Kentucky. 1,000 yards with Temple, combined yards, excuse me, in his first year in college football. Then had 1,000 yards with Vanderbilt, and then finished his career with Kentucky and had over 1,000 yards as well. Underrated as a pass catcher, which I think we're going to see throughout training camp more and more, that he can be used in the pass game. So I really think it might be James Cook is the guy. Like, he's the man, top rusher in the league last year. But then you look at Davis and Johnson, they can kind of split those snaps up and go with the hot hand. I don't really think there's going to be a clear cut two, because I like Ty Johnson, and I think Joe Brady likes Ty Johnson because he used him more. And I think they also like Ray Davis because they were willing to spend a 4th-round pick on him, where they probably could have been content with Darrington Evans, who was on the team last year and has some experience, and Ty Johnson. So it's really interesting to see Ray Davis out there doing his job, but I'm not too surprised just because of the veteran presence that he brings. Even though he's a rookie, he's older, he's been around college football with 3 different organizations, has had success, so he knows what it takes to be successful in multiple spots. So I'm really intrigued to see what he can do with this Bills team in his rookie season.
And obviously, you see down here, an easy guy to root for is Yeti points out. What a story for him, coming through the foster care system and really coming out in a leadership role and really gaining a lot from that experience as well. He seems to have wanted to change that system now that he's in Buffalo. That seems to be one of his off the field endeavors. I believe that that was something that he recently did that was put on display by the media. So good for him, and a great story, and something that would really take on even more life of its own if he's able to put together a successful pro career. And I know it's early, but just watching him out there with the other pros and watching him take handoffs from Josh Allen, it just looks like he fits that role quite well. What to round out the backfield conversation? What about James Cook? Did you see enough from him last season to warrant an investment into the future? He was 4th in the NFL in rushing yards, 1,100 yards, 4.7 yards per carry. He did have some drops in some big situations, but really displayed that two-way ability when he was able to hang on to the football. And Joe Brady, during his time speaking to the media on Tuesday, really raved about James Cook's offseason and how he's looked coming into OTAs. I know he wasn't there this past Tuesday, but Cook really seems to be in line to build on what we saw from him a season ago.
Yeah, James Cook, the investment for the future part, the question that always comes to my head when I'm asked that, and I've talked about it over the last year because I know his contract's eventually going to come up, and he was obviously having a great season, and you sit there and think, will the Bills be able to retain him? I don't think I would want them to, just because of the fact that running backs are replaceable. You look at the running back carousel this year, Josh Jacobs, very good running back, right? Still in his prime, goes to Green Bay. Derrick Henry on the tail end of his career, but still the Ravens could have, or not the Ravens, the Titans could have signed him, goes to Baltimore. There's a lot of names, big names moving. Saquon Barkley from the Giants to the Eagles, a division foe. So you look at across the NFL, I think it's hard to commit to a running back at this point, just because unless you have a Christian McCaffrey, who's like the ultimate, game changer that really elevates your team to that next level. I think James Cook is good. Very good. I think he's an above average pass catcher. I think he's got speed. I think he can run between the tackles better than you think. And I think he does all that. But the thing with me is the drop issues he needs to clean up. So I want to see him take the next step in that avenue. And then also his run blocking, which is yet to really stand out to me. He's had his moments, but it's yet to stand out to me. And I think Davis and Johnson, they feel more confident in a 2-minute drill near the end of the game with those guys because of the fact that they can protect Josh Allen. So I do think James Cook had a great year. I think he's a top-notch back. I think he's in near the top tier of those running backs in the NFL. But to commit to a guy when you see the running back carousel that all these other teams are doing and filling in these guys, drafting them, I'm just not willing to say I want to give James Cook that money that he might want because Josh Allen is a runner, and we can replace him maybe with a Ray Davis, who in 2 years down the line is already polished enough, and you can get 2 more years out of him in his rookie deal, and then you can keep doing that over and over again and going on those rookie contracts. So yeah, that's where I'm at with James Cook. How about you?
Yeah, you've certainly seen that that's what the Bills have kind of wanted to do with their running backs. They move on from Devin Singletary, and not the same style of back in James Cook. James Cook obviously more of a playmaker, and I think you're getting more from that position now in terms of that explosive ability, that contributing role in terms of catching out of the backfield and becoming the fourth leading rusher in the NFL. But you've set yourself up well in the future now with that draft pick of Ray Davis. You have Ty Johnson coming back, and Frank Gore Jr., although he hasn't looked too sharp during OTAs, you still have some other guys in the pipeline that have shown some promise in the past. So yeah, I don't think the long-term investment is anything that the Bills are thinking about anytime soon with James Cook, and I think that would go against the grain if they are to do that down the road. But another polarizing player among Bills fans, we spoke about Hamlin earlier. He's become quite polarizing over the past year, kind of his role on the team. And also second-year wide receiver Justin Shorter didn't find a role in his rookie year, wound up on the practice squad. This season, there's been talk with the changeover at wide receiver, maybe a better chance for him to land on the opening day 53-man roster, but still a tall hill to climb with all the veterans that are in front of him and the returners that are coming back as well, and a Tyrell Shavers who really put on a better display during last year at training camp. So Shorter, a long way to go, but he's done well during the first 2 weeks of OTA. Seemingly has caught everything thrown his way. At a nice day this past Tuesday, I believe 2-3 catches on the day for him. So the Bills will give him every avenue to succeed, him being one of their draft picks, a fifth rounder just last season. So he's going to be given that opportunity to step in here and carve out a role, whether it be on the offense or special teams this season. But like I said, tall hill to climb within that room. And for right now, he just needs to keep stacking these days as he has during OTAs.
Yeah, Justin Shorter, another very polarizing player for this team. Again, a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, was highly regarded as one of the better players coming out. Obviously didn't pan out in Florida, but still made enough plays where the Bills believed in him enough to select him in the 5th round. He just needs to, again, continue to stack these days. That's really what it comes down to. Can he show some impact on special teams? Can he beat out a guy like Chase Claypool? Can he win more reps than him? That's going to be the big thing. Can he show some run block prowess? Is he able to block downhill? Can he get on the boundary and take a corner to the ground and break open a hole for a Ray Davis in day 5 in St. John Fisher? Can he do that stuff? Is that the stuff he's able to do? That will be the big factor, because you got guys again like KJ Hamler, Chase Claypool, Matt Collins, who's the Energizer Bunny of the room. So there's a lot of different unique skill sets, but without Diggs, although the wide receiver room may be worse, there's also more opportunity. So these guys are going to have to step up. It may be a worse wide receiver room, but it forces guys like who we're discussing, the Justin Shorters of the world, to step up, make plays. And like you said, Alex, and from what you've seen, it looks like he's doing that so far in OTA. So that's a good sign for a guy who I think maybe didn't have his confidence diminished in year 1, but didn't see the field, was on the practice squad, came off the IR. They decided not to even try it and put him on the field. So definitely keep stacking those bricks, and it's good to hear that he's making plays this early in OTAs.
It's like we're back at the days of the Bills wide receiving core, including the likes of Kelvin Benjamin, Rod Streeter, Zay Jones, just a group
Andre
that,
Holmes.
right, maybe not to that level, but this group really
Yeah.
needs to prove itself this season. And it's really a shot in the dark, in a sense, entering the regular season. You have Khalil Shakir coming back, but in terms of the rest of the wide receivers, not any experience playing alongside Josh Allen and taking passes from him. So I think also you might see, I think you're almost certain to see a shift in the way that the Bills kind of generate their offense. You don't have a Stephon Diggs, a guy that you can attack at that mid-tier down the field level as often as you could. And I think you might see some more underneath work for the Bills this season. And you saw them really work that at OTAs on Tuesday, a little bit due to the wind, but that could be by design as well. You have a Curtis Samuel, a guy that's really good with the run after the catch. You have a Khalil Shakir also with that ability. Smaller receivers that are going to work better near the line of scrimmage. And we've seen Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, 2 tight ends, also start their stuff in this offense. So Joe Brady called it Josh Allen's offense. And then I watched a video today, the Touchdown Wire, I believe it was, the podcast with Doug Farrar. Josh Allen called it Joe Brady's offense. So I think the two are going to share ownership of this offense. But one thing that's for certain is we're going to see some changes. And I think it may start with more close to the line of scrimmage, underneath work. The too high safety shell has really taken on a life of its own in the NFL. And I think you might see the Bills try to counter that this season with some scheme change.
Yeah, there's obviously more time for Joe Brady to implement a whole new, not whole new playbook, but definitely a lot more sprinkles, and maybe, who knows, maybe a whole new playbook with different language. We really don't know, but Joe Brady has way more time to implement what he wants to do. And I agree. I think the Bills are going to use more of a versatile attack. Now, I think they want to be a bit more aggressive than they were at the end of last season because of the fact that I think they lacked that explosive play guy. Gabe Davis was never consistent enough. I think Diggs, they tried to implement on those quick flare screens on the outside, and it never really got going to open up the downfield stuff. Now you have, like you said, guys that can win underneath, that can get the rack, the run after catch, but you also have speedsters. Khalil Shakir can win deep. He can win deep. Curtis Samuel can win deep. Matt Collins can win deep. So there's a lot of guys on this roster. Chase Claypool, his specialty coming out, if he can make a push, was going deep. Justin Shorter, his specialty. So you have a lot of ability to not only go underneath, but also go long. So it's going to be interesting what they do there with that. But yeah, Josh Allen on that podcast today that you had mentioned, I think it was very wise of him, where he kind of said Joe Brady was making him uncomfortable. So while also being as great as he is, he's also still working on his footwork. He's working on deceiving the defense with his eyes. So Joe Brady, I think, is putting him in more of an uncomfortable position, forcing him to get everyone involved. Where in years past with Brian Dable and Ken Dorsey, it was a lot of Stephon Diggs is the main guy. Look his way. If not, figure it out. So I think with that, with the comments from Dalton Kincaid and Khalil Shakir after Tuesday's OTA practice, where they said they want to get bigger, faster, stronger, work on yards after catch, know their roles. I think everyone in cohesion in that wide receiver room and tight end room want to know their role and be the best they can be. And that's really what this offense is going to be about. Know your role, do your job, and it will work itself out. And you have enough talent and playmakers at the tight end, running back, and wide receiver position where they can still be one of the best offenses in football.
And when Allen was talking about Joe Brady making him uncomfortable, he was definitely saying it in a positive sense, and how he's forcing him to do certain things that they haven't always done, as you're saying, within the Bills' offensive system. You mentioned the footwork. You mentioned where he's going with his eyes. And I think that can only lead to positive things for the Bills as they look to transition with Joe Brady in the full-time role as offensive coordinator. And you mentioned them looking to attack more down the field. And so much has been said about Dalton Kincaid's emergence within this offense. Last year, set the rookie tight end record, the rookie reception record for the Bills. A lot of shorter stuff, a lot of conservative routes, I would say. I think this year what you might see more so from Kincaid is in an attack style role, down the seam, looking to go a little bit deeper, looking to go over the top, using those mismatches that a tight end of his caliber can create. And that leads me to our next question here. With such the overhaul at wide receiver, what are you projecting for Dalton Kincaid this season? Finished last season, 73 receptions, 673 yards, 2 touchdowns. Travis Kelce finished last season, 93 receptions, 984 yards, 5 touchdowns. Year before, finished with an insane 110 receptions, 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns. I think what we see from Kincaid this season is somewhere close to that last year from Kelce. I'm not sure if we see him get over the 100 reception plateau or even eclipse 1,000 yards. I think that might be biting off a little bit too much for Kincaid right away, but certainly going to see a boost in the reception, certainly going to see a boost in the yardage. And I also think his role in the red zone and close in toward the goal line will also increase too. What are you looking for from Kincaid this season? Do you think he can approach those Kelce numbers? Do you think he might go as lofty as Kelce in 2022 numbers, like some people are projecting, over 100 receptions?
Yeah, on the red zone aspect, real quick, another thing that I think Joe Brady can implement because of how focused teams, especially early on, might be on Dalton Kincaid is even use him as a decoy to help guys like Dawson Knox because he can win one-on-one. Dawson Knox isn't – he might drop some oopsies. He might have some oopsies and drop the ball, but in contested catch situations and in the red zone, he's been pretty reliable when called upon. So if you can get Dalton Kincaid and be like, oh, the defense is really focusing on him, that's why I think this offense can be so fun to watch. And based on the projections, Alex, I think you're spot on with where I think Dalton Kincaid will be this year. Travis Kelce's worst season in the last, let me count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So in his last 8 seasons, last year was his worst season with 984 yards, 93 catches, and 5 touchdowns. But heck yeah, I would take that from Dalton Kincaid in his second season. I think he's right around 100 to 110 targets, that 90 to 100 catch a marker, maybe 80 to 100. And then you're looking at anywhere from probably 800 to 1,000 yards. And then hopefully that 2 touchdown number increases because I think they do want to use him more, especially early on, to make defenses really keen in on him when watching tape to prepare for the Bills week in, week out. So, yeah, Dalton Kincaid is going to be – I mean, I love them coming out of Utah, and when he was there, those wide receivers went off the board. I was ecstatic with the pick. I thought he could come right in, breaks the tight end, Bills rookie record in receptions in his first season, and now you lose Stephon Diggs. You know what that means? It's Dalton Kincaid's time to eat, and I think he's going to do that in 2024.
And I think he's really the key that can unlock so many other players within this offense as well. If teams are going into matchups with the Bills, obviously this year you're not going to be able to focus on a Stephon Diggs. That's not going to be a part of the game plan. You're going to have to go in. You're going to have to figure out, especially early in the season, who the Bills are looking for, who they're looking to involve early in this offense. But if Kincaid can emerge quickly as that mismatch that they're looking for, I think that can just unlock so much within this offense. He appears to be in great shape through the first 2 weeks of OTAs. It appears to me anyway like he's slimmed down perhaps a little bit.
That's funny because I think he mentioned in the press conference that he's putting on weight.
Oh, wow.
So maybe
just leaner, and just looks a little bit sharper out there. But building rapport with Josh Allen, growing in year 2, you can tell that those guys are making a point to really work together during practices, and you can tell the team is really making a point to get him involved early and often during these OTA practices. But like I said, perhaps more of a downfield attacking role for Kincaid this year. And I think the Bills are certainly going to have to utilize him in that sense. Now, moving to the defensive side of the ball during OTAs, we saw the return of Daquan Jones this past Tuesday. He missed week 1, but came back. And I wrote in the story, my takeaway story, that Daquan Jones had a ball batted down at the line of scrimmage, second play of team drills. I believe a few others had Greg Rousseau. Austin Johnson was also in on the play. It was kind of a mash of characters there, but nonetheless, a good play for the defensive line. And there's not many huge takeaways you're going to have for line play during these OTA sessions. There's no pads on. It's just helmets. So these guys are just running around out there. But it was good to see Jones getting involved, and Austin Johnson, a guy who stood out a few times on Tuesday, a guy who's fighting for a role in kind of the depth position at defensive line. But it's going to be interesting to see how this defensive line group shakes out. You lose your leading sack guy in Leonard Floyd, and if he can stay healthy, I think the sky's the limit for Greg Rousseau. But that's the if he can stay healthy this season, I think he's going to increase that career high in sacks and 8, and I think the Bills need him to do so. Same thing with Ajay Epinesa, back-to-back years with 6.5 sacks. Bills looking for much more out of him this season. Von Miller and Ajay Epinesa both absent from week 2 of OTAs, and it remains unknown what we're going to see from Von Miller this season, and that's another big question surrounding Bills training camp. But along with Johnson, another depth player, this time on the edge, really making an impact on week 2. Cameron Klein, who has been in this system for a couple of years now, and an undrafted player, I believe, that went to Indianapolis and has since come to Buffalo and really trying to make his way in this system. Perhaps this is the year that he finds his footing and makes his way. The Bills lose Shaq Lawson, trying to replace that role and maybe a bit more up front as well. So a lot to look at up front. It felt like Ajay Epinesa took a jump last year. Going to need more from him this year. I'm all for pressure rate for pressure rate, but sacks need to start coming along with it.
Yeah, Cameron Klein, I'll start there. John Roberts said I hear Klein did well Tuesday. He's an interesting guy because I think he can play outside and inside. He's like 285, 290. At least that's what he's listed. So I think that will be interesting to see how he's used. Will he stay outside all a training camp, or will they see what he can do on the inside? But again, Lyle Collins was the one blocking for Cameron Klein, and he's a guy that hasn't played football in a year. So like, where does that stand? He's beating a Lyle Collins who again has not played football in a year, and it's OTA. So I do like the positivity from Klein. I think it's good to see because Joe Marino actually had him on his 53-man roster projection last season. So I think there are a lot of, some media and probably the team as well, maybe a bit higher on Cameron Klein than the general Bills Mafia consensus. He's not really talked about much, and not many people probably even know that he's maybe fighting for a roster spot come August. But I like him. And like you said with Greg Rousseau, I'll just touch on him real quick. Contract year. The injuries have obviously lingered, the foot last year especially. Greg Rousseau needs to, and I mean needs to, because it's my biggest concern for this Bills team going into 2024. The pass catchers I think will be figured out because they have Josh Allen, and that's we'll talk about that at a later date. I think this edge rushing group really needs to step up, and I think Greg Rousseau needs to be the guy that is the one that really steps up. Like AJ Epinesa, I think you can get a little bit more out of him. Obviously, he'll have an increased snap share. He'll obviously have a little bit more action because of the loss of Leonard Floyd and the uncertainty of what Von Miller will be at age 34, 35 coming off, a very quiet 2023 campaign. But Greg Rousseau needs to step up in a contract year. He has all the tangibles. He's 6'7". He's an athletic freak. He's made freakish plays. The batted ball in the air when he picked off Mahomes, that comes to mind. So he needs to be able to do that consistently, stay healthy. And I think this defensive line group will all benefit from a big contract fourth season from the former first round pick in Greg Rousseau.
And I also mentioned Jones and Johnson on the interior without Ed Oliver, who was absent on Tuesday. A lot of veterans absent on Tuesday. Not really a big concern in any regard. A lot of veterans across the league miss OTAs. We saw it from Stephon Diggs last year, but he's certainly not the only one. One that I would maybe just keep a minor eye on is Rousseau Douglas. He's missed both weeks of OTAs, but like I said, kind of a mild concern there. But up front, defensive line, much like on the edge, the depth roles being fought for on the interior. Dwayne Carter will have every opportunity. I mentioned it before with Justin Shorter. When you're a draft pick of a team, especially in that first year, as early as they selected Dwayne Carter, they're going to want to get him out there and get him that experience on the field. But can guys like in Austin Johnson and Elianku and others on the depth chart, can they make it difficult for Dwayne Carter to see the field? It would certainly be a good problem for the Bills to have, considering the amount that they lost at that position. You lose a Jordan Phillips, you lose a Tim Settle, Poona Ford. All three of those players not really highly productive for the Bills, but a couple of them had some experience within the system. So having to do a complete overhaul in terms of the depth, perhaps we see in Eli Anku burst his way through, or in Austin Johnson, a free agent signing, come over, some veteran leadership in there, win a depth role. But it's going to be interesting to see how the defensive line shakes out here over the next several weeks and months. A lot of underneath stuff for the Bills on Tuesday in terms of offense. A lot of that due to the wind, but the secondary also played pretty well without Douglas, as I mentioned, who missed practice for the second straight week. And my takeaways from the early stages of this offseason, preseason process, and really dating back to last season, I believe you were telling me there's been some discourse regarding Christian Benford's role on this team and whether he's solidified a starting role. I don't know how there could be any question of that entering this season. It seems to me he's going to be a solid player in this league for years to come. He's proved it the past couple of seasons. Really, I think has provided more and more quickly than the Bills expected out of him. Kind of a later round pick, really stepping in and taking the bull by the horns and taking over that starting role. And they need Benford's experience in this system coming over this season with the amount of changeover in that secondary. You have Douglas in his second year with the team, but Benford is kind of the elder statesman in that secondary now as a young player. And you have Kaiir Elam coming on, and we'll continue that conversation next. But explain what you've heard Bills fans talking about with Benford. It seems to me like the Bills are in good shape there with Benford for years to come.
All I'll say with the Benford Elam thing, and it's going to be, I promise, we will be at St. John Fisher talking about this in August with the Benford Elam conversation, or maybe Douglas, whoever that may be. But I think the reason that it's so hard for fans, and honestly, it makes sense. It's an obvious kind of thing, but without the names attached, Christian Benford, Kaiir Elam, forget about the names. First round trade up from Florida, 6th round pick from Villanova. That's the difference. And that's why we're always going to have this conversation, because the one guy is a highly touted first round pick. Brandon B went up and got him. He brought the playbook on the plane. He was going to be this stud corner for this team from day one. He's physical, handsy, had all these intangibles. And then Christian Benford comes out of nowhere in the same year as a rookie and beats the first round pick from Florida from an FCS school like Villanova, who's really just known for basketball. I don't even know if I could name another Villanova football player right now. But Benford and Elam, I'm totally on board with you. I think Benford has shown enough. I would even say like he's a top 15 to 20 corner in the league. Like if you look at analytics, if you look at metrics, and if you look at stats and all that stuff, Christian Benford, although he's not the big name, I think he's quietly pushing that top 15, top 20 cornerback in football. And maybe that's a hot take, but he's just been so reliable. He's had some bruises along the way, some injury concerns, or he's missed a few weeks here and there, but that's the NFL. That's what happens. I think Benford and Elam, the conversation will continue to happen because of the fact that, one, I think John Butler leaving the building is big for Kaiir Elam. And I think Bobby Babich taking over the defense, maybe Bills fans are thinking more man defense, more blitz, more attack, more physicality, which that's what Kaiir Elam really was coming out of college. So you pair those two plus the first round pick and him being from Florida, I think we're going to be having that conversation, but I don't think there's any chance, maybe a slim chance, but I think Christian Benford has that cornerback one slot locked up, but who knows if they're really a match base. Maybe it's a Douglas, maybe they just, play halves or something, and it's not really let's follow the number one guy because maybe they don't need to.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the change in position, coach. I certainly think that's going to make a difference, and perhaps nobody's at fault in that situation. Sometimes just coaches and players don't mesh in terms of style and how players like to be coached. And now you're bringing in Jamil Adai, and it seems like he and Kaiir Elam have really hit the ground running in terms of their relationship. I know Elam was asked about Adai during his press availability after practice on Tuesday and really gave glowing remarks about him. You see them connected at the hip a lot on the practice field. So I think that's a budding relationship that could, as you said, perhaps turn the tide in Elam's career. And you also mentioned a potential increase in use of man coverage this year for the Bills. And the Bills played well below the league average in terms of man coverage snaps last year. And to ask a player of Kaiir Elam's skill set to step in and succeed in that level of system, I think is just a lot to ask. And if you change things a little bit, you're not all of a sudden going to see them come out here and I don't think anyway, run 50% man coverage or go man coverage exclusively. But to put your first round pick in a better position to succeed, I think that can only bode well for the team. And to get a player of Elam's skill set come playoff time, I think that can really boost your chances as well. You need that player that's able to lock up a defender late in the game, closing in on the end zone, a game-winning drive, get that pass breakup. And Elam's shown a tendency to make the big play. I just think his overall consistency and maybe a little penalty trouble with his grabby hands have really done him in to start his career. But another important takeaway from the defense, Matt Milano was on the field on Tuesday. He was on the field the first week in OTAs, but this time we saw him on the field jogging, changing direction, doing some of the early drills that a player does in the course of one's recovery. So certainly a good sign there. And Sean McDermott said during week 1 that Milano was on schedule. Perhaps this is a sign that maybe he's ahead of schedule as McDermott targeted training camp for his return to the practice field. But we'll see what we see from Milano so far. In his stead, I like what I've seen from Dorian Williams. It's tough to tell without the pads, but from my vantage point, seems like he hasn't stood out, in a good way. There's times last year where it seemed like he was out of position and really needed to be coached at this point of the season. And obviously a year in the league, a year in the system, it seems like he's in a much better position than he was a season ago.
Yeah, Dorian Williams, a very interesting player. I think I was able to speak with him at the combine before the Bills took him last offseason, and he was obviously good mindset. I thought he reminded me of like a mini Tremaine Edmonds. Just he was a very instinctive player. He had very good athletically high RAS score, and I really think he kind of plays that way. Now I think he struggles more in terms of pass coverage, and that's why you saw him kind of see AJ Klein get some snaps there. But in terms of the length, although he's a little bit smaller, his arms are crazy long, and he can play a very aggressive, very fast game. So I'm excited to see what Dorian can do this year. I think he's going to be a key piece, especially for depth for guys like Terrell Bernard, who were banged up all last season with knee injuries and stuff, and Matt Milano, the uncertainty there. But again, good to hear that Matt Milano's coming back and he's back, working out, jogging. That's always a good sign. You probably see him around training camp, but I'm hoping at least by week 1 that he's out there for this Bills defense. But yeah, Matt Milano, Dorian Williams, the whole linebacking core. It's going to be interesting to see what takes shape come August, and we'll see. Time will tell.
And Elam's also spent some time working with Taron Johnson. He mentioned that during his press availability as well, trying to learn to play a little bit smaller and in smaller spaces a little bit better. And I think that can only help Elam improve as well. And if you look back at Taron Johnson's career, he hit some bumps in the road throughout as well. He's an all-pro now, but it wasn't always that way. And for him to be there to help Elam through some tough times as a leader within this system, like I said, I think that can only bode well for a young player in Elam's circumstance. Final takeaway from Tuesday's OTAs. You can kind of take it with a grain of salt, but there was an interesting aspect with it. Tyler Bass knocks through a 70-yard field goal with a fierce wind at his back. And when I say fierce wind, the wind was whipping on Tuesday. But there was no rush on this play. So like I said, you kind of take it with a grain of salt. You're able to get that lower trajectory and really put yourself in a better position to make a deep kick. But Sal Capaccio of WGR put out a post on X alluding to the fact that, or revealing the fact that Bass had made the 70-yard field goal. And it was really met with much chagrin from Bills Mafia, who were really collectively saying, do it in the playoffs for Bass, who obviously missed a kick against the Chiefs and led to, or in part led to the Bills losing that game. But it kind of surprised me, the reaction. Bass has been a pretty good player for this team. He didn't have a great season a year ago, 82%, his lowest since his rookie season. He missed 5 kicks, 4 beyond 40 yards. But where are we with Tyler Bass? He just signed that contract. It seemed like he was the Bills' kicker of the future, but you miss a big kick in the playoffs, and that's obviously going to ruffle a few feathers amongst the fan base. And it seems like the Bills fans haven't forgotten about it entering this season.
Yeah, any fan base that witnesses their kicker miss a game-tying field goal in the divisional round, especially a fan base like the Bills, where you're going up against the Chiefs every season and falling short, definitely understand why Bills fans would react that way. But still good to see that Tyler Bass nailed the 70-yarder. That's always good for the confidence. But yeah, I want to see more from Tyler Bass this year. I'm not saying I'm crazy concerned or even that I'm concerned at all, but I did see a few signs of feel a little bit uncertain about him at some points last year. I feel like in his first couple seasons, I felt like he was almost automatic, and every time he stepped up, I felt like it was going to go through the uprights. Last year, it was a little shaky, and then obviously it ended with the missed field goal against the Chiefs. But maybe this is a reset for him. Maybe that is what he needed. He needed some controversy to go on where he felt maybe I do need to make a change, or maybe I do need to train harder in the offseason, or maybe, focus more, or whatever it may be. Maybe a reset is what he needs. Kicker, it's a lot about the mental. And John Robert here says, I heard Jack Browning could be the future punter. On the Shout podcast, Matt Perino and Ryan Talbot, they were discussing that Jack Browning was the holder for Tyler Bass the majority of the day. So Punterpalooza will be back at St. John Fisher this year. We'll see how that shakes out with the uncertainty at the punting position. But yeah, in terms of Tyler Bass, I want to see him refocus this year, lock back in. And I think he's fine. I think he'll be fine. But I think with the little setback with the miss against the Chiefs will only help him if he's a player that the Bills believe in and drafted in, that he will bounce back from adversity like a lot of Bills players that they want do.
Yeah, Sam Martin was present at practice on Tuesday, but didn't have his helmet, not participating. So some increased opportunity for Jack Browning out there to hold for Tyler Bass. And you have Matt Hawk out there as well, perhaps as the holding guru, just trying to spread his knowledge to these guys. I'm not sure if he has any chance to make the final roster, but hey, it's not a bad idea for the Bills to have him around during the offseason. And we have our boy Mookie here talking pup list. I think he's referring to Milano there. That's what I would think.
Yeah.
Certainly a chance for Milano to end up on the pup list. We saw the Bills play up Von Miller's return last year. It really seemed like he was going to be ready for week 1 or maybe shortly thereafter, and didn't return until week 6. If my memory.
Von Miller was also.
Or excuse me, Von Miller. When did Von Miller return last year?
Von Miller returned. Geez, you're gonna put me on the spot. Von Miller returned after I want to say like week 8, week 9, maybe.
Let's see.
You can check that, but I would say like middle of the year. Maybe it was early, week 5, Giants, right?
Well, I said week 6 initially. I just want to make sure we're not giving away incorrect information here.
We'll get it for you right here, right now. Don't worry.
Here, right now, live Buffalo football talk. Yes, week 5. It appears against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
In London. So that game was the Matt Milano to Clown Jones injured on the same play, touchdown. That was definitely a not the best memory of last season for this Bills team, but
no, certainly not. Anything regarding Von Miller, not a great memory from the 2023 season. But to close today's show, AJ, we've discussed OTAs. We've discussed the roster really at large over the past several weeks. We hinted at the Bills' schedule on our last show, but let's dive in and do a little projection within the AFC East and talk about how we believe things are going to turn out within the division, this season. The way I see it, it's Bills, Jets, Dolphins, Patriots. And let me tell you why. Don't have a lot of faith in Aaron Rodgers. I don't have a lot of faith in him staying healthy. I should say, if he is to stay healthy, I think this team can really be good. Rodgers is not that far removed from an MVP season, but we saw him wither away in week 1 last season. And if you troll social media, you're already seeing videos of him dealing with foot issues this season. I think it was just a blister, but it's fun. It's fun to joke around about it. But if Rodgers can stay healthy this season, you bring in a guy like Mike Williams, whose health is also a concern. Tyron Smith along the offensive line, also a guy with an injury history. But if it stays together for the Jets this season with Breece Hall drafting a Braylon Allen, Malachi Corley, the offense is going to be much better if Rodgers can stay healthy. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But that's the question. Can Rodgers stay healthy? Can he hold up through 1 week, 2 weeks, 10 weeks, a whole season, and potentially guide this Jets team to their first playoff berth in about a decade and a half? Like I said, they've really bolstered this roster, and the roster was strong going into last season. You had a lot of returners on the defensive side of the ball. I mentioned what they've done to bolster the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, you add a Hassan Reddick, 50.5 sacks, back-to-back All-Pros over the last 4 seasons. You add him to an already impressive defense like I said, if everything goes right for this team, this could be a scary team to watch within the division. I'm like we discussed with Nate Geary a few weeks ago. I'm not sure if I have them in the Super Bowl contender area, but for my money, the Jets are the biggest contender when it comes to competing with the Bills for that AFC East title.
Yeah, 100%. I'm 100% with you on that. I think what the Jets have done, and again, Rodgers is the big question mark, and who knows what the heck he'll be, but he's still a two-time, three-time MVP. He's a Super Bowl champion. He's done it. So Rodgers is a guy that has been able to do it, and he's never really had great defenses in Green Bay. So now you pair that with a defense with Robert Saleh has done a great job, I think, with that defense. Although the quarterback situation's always been a little bit of a joke there. Sorry, but Mike White, Zach Wilson, that never really just panned out. More of a joke to me. But again, I do like Mike White. Don't ask Matt Perino about that, but I do like Mike White. This defensive line: Javon Kinlaw, Quinnen Williams, Hassan Reddick, Jermaine Johnson. That's one of the best defensive lines the Bills will see all season. Will McDonald, 2023 first-round pick. Hopefully, or maybe he'll take a step for this Jets defense. C.J. Mosley in the middle with Quincy Williams, and then Sauce Gardner, Chuck Clark, DJ Reed in the secondary. I mean, that's on paper, one of the best defenses. You pair that with a Robert Saleh, defensive coordinator, defensive mind, who's done a really good job with San Francisco, got him the job with the Jets, and now he's really excelled with that defensive unit. So this Jets team, I really think they can make a push. I'll say right now, I think they make the playoffs. Just saying that, assuming they're healthy. But yeah, this Dolphins team, I know you had them third, Alex. They lost a lot of key pieces in my eyes. Christian Wilkins signed with the Raiders to a $110 million deal. Robert Hunt, the starting guard for them last year, signed with the Panthers for $100 million. Xavier Howard was released. Jerome Baker, the linebacker, was released to free up money. Andrew Van Ginkel, who, although there's a lot of memes about him and some make fun of him, I think he's a very good player and has actually performed better than what his expectations were. And then a Brandon Jones, the starting safety for them last year, is also not on the market, and he is on Denver now, signing a $20 million deal. And then finally, Emmanuel Ogbah, the defensive end, who I think when that $10 million frees up this week on Alex, I think Emmanuel Ogbah might be an interesting defensive end target for this Bills team to maybe add some experience with the Dolphins, a little bit older in his career, but I still think he can be a rotational piece that can get after the quarterback, especially on obvious passing down. So this Dolphins team, they add an OBJ. They obviously have Waddle and Hill, who's a scary, but I believe, and I'll say it now, I believe in Aaron Rodgers more than Tua. And that's just where I'm at. And I know it's maybe crazy to say because Tua is considered in his prime, and I think the Dolphins will give him a lucrative contract here in the next year or two. But I just trust Rodgers and the defense of the New York Jets more than the Dolphins. And what the Dolphins did last year, that colossal, what did they do? They messed it all up against the Titans with Will Levis, and he led the drive so the Bills could retain the division another year. I just think they have showed an inability in the biggest moments down the stretch to win the big games. And I think the Bills have shown that. And I think Aaron Rodgers throughout his career, paired with that defense, is more equipped to do it than a Miami Dolphins team that I think still has a lot of questions and a lot of losses on the defensive side of the ball, paired with a Tua who I still think is unproven at this point.
Right. When I said earlier, it's fun to joke about Aaron Rodgers. It's certainly not fun to joke about injury or potential injury. It's just kind of fun to stoke the flames with Jets.
He's a conspiracy theorist.
Well, yeah, and it's just like fun to get Jets fans going. And I'm not so sure I believe in the health of Aaron Rodgers, but as you said, you can't project injury. And if I'm projecting a healthy Aaron Rodgers with the pieces the Jets have added offensively and bolstering that defense, I just see them as the ultimate contender in this division. And if you mentioned the Dolphins, the fast get faster with OBJ, and you add a running back, Jalen Wright, ran a 4.3 at the combine. So it looks like they're just trying to outscore and outrun everybody this season. I don't know if you can put up 70 points on a regular basis like they did last season, but they're certainly going to try this season. Like you mentioned, all the losses on defense, they do add a Chop Robinson, but otherwise, I think they're certain to take a step back on that side of the ball. And then you go to the Patriots. I'm not going to spend much time on them. I do believe they'll be, I don't know if I should say much improved. They will certainly be improved, I believe, from a season ago. And once again, kind of like the Jets, it's all going to depend on the quarterback position. If Drake May can be serviceable under center. I think they drafted a couple of wide receivers, Javon Baker, one of them, Jalen Polk. I think the other one, the defense,
Yep.
Get some guys back this year. Christian Gonzalez returns, Matthew Judon. You re-sign Josh Uche. So if Drake May can put together a serviceable rookie season, much like we saw from Mac Jones a few years ago before the wheels fell off for him, I think this Patriots team could make life difficult for the rest of the AFC East. Now, do I see them as a potential playoff contender? No, but I think Gerard Mayo in his first season as head coach could be in for a somewhat of a bounce back year with this organization, and it all starts with the guys that are getting back on defense.
Yeah, spot on. I think the New England Patriots are kind of in the spot the 2018 Bills were. You have a projected quarterback in Drake May, who I think, he said he wants to be like Josh Allen or thinks he could be Josh Allen. I'm not going to go that far, and I think Bill Belichick at the draft kind of owned Drake May when he was selected. It was like there's no chance that this guy's going to be Josh Allen. But in terms of the projection, I don't think you're going to get. I don't even know if he'll initially start, because I think Jacoby Brissett is more of a suitable veteran that you can learn behind for a Drake May that's kind of a raw talent that has a lot of stuff to work on. But the intangibles are there, the talent's there. So I think if he gets an opportunity throughout the season, or there's an injury to Brissett or something like that, I think Drake May could make a run in terms of just putting some games together and stuff like that. He obviously, like you said, added Javon Baker and Jalen Polk. Javon Baker was highly talked about amongst Bills fans. KJ Osborne, Juju Smith-Schuster, Kendrick Bourne, Demario Douglas. So Hunter Henry at tight end. So they don't have that bad of a playmaking group, but it's hard to get your head around the Patriots being anything special. Like I said, the 2018 Bills went 6-10, 5-11, somewhere around there. So I expect that for this New England Patriots team. I think they're a 5-6 win team with maybe a couple shocking wins. I know last year the 4-win Patriots defeated the Buffalo Bills, and Mac Jones led a game-winning drive. It's the NFL, so who the heck knows? Week-to-week league. But yeah, the Patriots, not really concerned. But again, like you said, they have some tools. Gerard Mayo, the defense. Kyle Duggar's another one that he signed an extension. Great player on the back end for them. So we will see what the Bill Belichick-less New England Patriots will be.
Yeah, I think Brissett set to maybe start the season as the bridge quarterback, but you take a guy in the top 5 like the Patriots do, you certainly want to get that guy under center sooner rather than later there in New England. But AJ, I think we've covered a lot today, closing in on an hour here. We started with a little dog talk, then we talked about some dogs on the Bills roster. Any reflections from today's episode? Anything that you'd like to leave the people with moving forward?
Yeah, just continue tuning in to Right Here, Right Now, live Buffalo football talk with myself and Alex. We greatly appreciate all the comments today. Dad, thank you for the question. We'll get to that another time about the turnovers.
No, go ahead. I didn't see it there.
All right. Love Josh Allen. However, he was second in the NFL with 22 turnovers at the quarterback position. Do you feel this could become a bigger issue with so many new receivers? I feel like my dad and I have had this conversation before, and I try to tell him no, but I'm just not concerned with it. The interceptions for me, I think it's a make or break league, and I think he's a guy that you take what he does. It is what it is. That's Josh Allen. It's the Josh Allen experience. He does too much good to be concerned about the ineptitude of the turnovers. If you look down the stretch, each of his last four seasons in the playoffs, he is one of the best statistically quarterbacks in the playoffs, and he's also one of the best quarterbacks down the stretch in winning games and stuff like that. So, no, I'm not concerned, but do they play a role in the Bills losing some games? Yes. But in the biggest moments throughout his career, have they caused the Bills to lose games? No. That's been more of a Sean McDermott's defense issue, while also maybe some offensive miscues late in games. But for the most part, I think Josh Allen, when the game's been on the line, his turnovers have really not shown up enough for me to be like, he has so many turnovers. Patrick Mahomes turns the ball over. Joe Burrow turns the ball over. All these guys turn the ball over. It's a pass-heavy league. And I think with Joe Brady, those turnovers because of the fact they'll run the ball more, and he's not going to be forced to force-feed Stephon Diggs the ball all the time.
Yeah, I certainly get the wavelength that your dad's following there with a bunch of new faces within the room, throwing to a lot of new targets. Could lead to some miscommunication, particularly early in the season. But then again, I don't think it could get any worse than what we saw from Josh Allen and Gabe Davis at times last season. It seemed like the two were completely thinking separately at many points throughout last season. But AJ, that about does it for this show. Thanks again for to everybody for tuning in. You can find us on X, YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcast. Please take time to rate, share, like, and review the pod, and we will see you next time.
Peace out.